Was I wrong about the Bitcoin 4-year cycle? For years, I've stood pretty firm that the cycle as we've known it was going to be over. But now, right as we approach this critical window, as we are approaching that time where we should see this complete, I'm seeing more and more people adopt this same belief. And in the markets, when everyone starts thinking the same way, that's usually when I start leaning the other direction. So is this cycle truly broken, or are we staring down another major top that could drag us into a multi-month downturn? I'm going to break it all down for you in today's video. My name is Paul Sampson. Welcome back to DataDash. When it comes to trading and investing, the number one advantage that you can have is access. Access to reliable insights, professional grade analysis, and a community that pushes you to get better each and every single day. And that's exactly what we've built over at DataDash Pro. When you join, you get direct access to our Traders Club Discord, where I share daily updates, chart setups, and insights into both short-term moves and longer-term market structure. Whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or the broader altcoin market, you'll know at the exact levels and setups I'm watching personally. And just as important, you'll be a part of a tight-knit community of traders who are learning, growing, and navigating this market together. On top of that, you can subscribe to the Dash Report written by Nicholas Merton, which is a monthly deep dive into the global macro picture, everything from equities and commodities to interest rates and crypto. Nick breaks it all down, the bigger trends driving financial markets as well, and it's one of the most valuable resources you can have if you want to understand the why behind the moves we're seeing. And if you really want the full DataDash experience, you can bundle the two, the Traders Club and the Dash Report, and get the complete package. That way you're covered from daily trading setups all the way to monthly macro strategy. So if you're serious about trading, investing, and staying ahead in this fast-moving market, I'd encourage you to check out datadashpro.com. Whether you join the Discord, subscribe to the Dash Report, or bundle the two of them together, you'll be taking a big step toward trading with more clarity and confidence. That's datadashpro.com, where traders and investors level up. The link is down in our description below. I look forward to seeing you all inside. I'm gonna make this video short, sweet, and to the point, folks. So let's go right over to the Bitcoin screen. And this is essentially where you can find the majority, if not all, the data on Bitcoin dating all the way back to the time of its inception on the chart, at least. This is the Bitstamp chart. This is at least as far back as I've found. And as you can see, it's been a really steady progression up and to the right, really healthy chart that what you want to see. A lot of times people will do this where you've seen some overall cycle analysis where we'll take a date range and you'll just kind of go through and look and see how long it took to go from high to high, and they'll count it out and say, all right, this was 212 bar, we're on the weekly time frame, but if this was on the daily, it would be like, all right, this was 300 days or this was 800 days, and then they do it again over here and kind of monitor how long it took between the high to the high, and they'd really catch these similar comparisons. And I'm going to show you a way that we can actually look for some very specific time frames, really doing measured moves that this is a really helpful thing to kind of look to and kind of be aware of in certain times, but I'm going to show you a little bit more of a precision tool that we can look to around time. And the only thing about it is it's not by any means to try to predict anything, but it's going to be able to guide us, I suppose, on some time when we should be aware of certain pivots in the market, right? So you hear me talk a lot about pivots by the averages of price. Last week's average is the weekly pivot, monthly pivot. In this term, I'm looking at pivots in the market where the market pivots in a different fashion, right? Where we get reversals, essentially. All right, before we do that, one of the biggest reasons that I want to point out of why I've been adamant that we may see, and this was dating back years ago, mind you, not just recently, that we may see the 4-year cycle broken in the terms of what we've seen. And generally the 4-year cycle, at least to me, is you get the big blow off top 4 years after the previous one, you get a year bear market after that, right? In layman's terms, where we've seen it basically the last few iterations. All right, you got 2013 all-time high, 1 year bear market essentially. About 4 years later, you get another all-time high 4 years later after that, 1 year bear market, 1 year bear market, right? That's just the overall thesis here. I'm just going to point out that if you'd like to dive deeper into the 4-year analytics, I mean, there's other people that probably go over it pretty in depth, but really that's all you need to see, in my opinion. Right? There's going to be some halving events that occur here and there, but that's really the overall thesis to me, right? Is that you get these huge bursts up, met with a climax around a 4-year window difference. You get a 1 year pullback, you get the 3 to 4 year push up, you get the blow off top, 1 year pullback, 3 to 4 year push up, 1 year pullback, okay? And those are known as our big bear markets that, wreck the market. And the reason that I was looking for this to be potentially a little different is because of what I truly think that we're building out here, which is, yes, there's been 4 year iterations along the way, and that's the only amount of data points that we have to go off of. But I've been measuring this against the 20-year housing market cycle, and which essentially started right in 2012, right? So we're basically right here at the beginning-ish of Bitcoin's chart. And the idea here is that we're building the first 20-year cycle in crypto alongside the housing market. And that is essentially this little schematic here, where, again, I've covered this multiple times. All these years are basically the beginning of the uptrend here. There's a mid-cycle slowdown that's usually started off by a black swan event, right? So, and then you get a 2 to 4 year cool down. It's always met with high inflation, high interest rates. Everybody expects a larger correction to occur, a recession to continue, and then you get a pretty decent, run to the upside for the remaining years before you actually get a blow off top and you finish out this overall 18 to 20 year cycle. Again, this is the housing market, the economic cycle, the business cycle, however you want to put it. It's pretty much everything, right? It's not just the housing market when I state that. Of course, the stock market is going to, be along for the ride, and then now crypto potentially. And again, these years here are stacked in fours because this was the 1955 rally that ended in 72 with the Cuban Missile Crisis as the Black Swan event. 1975 we restarted. Black Swan event in the 80s was the Gulf War, finished off at 89, restarted again in 93. Black Swan event in 01 was 9/11. 2003 we had high inflation, high interest rates. Everybody expected a recession to continue until we pushed up till about 2007 when the market finally topped. We all know the 2008 rollover at that point. That was really the last notable high, and then we restarted this cycle essentially in 2011, hence when Bitcoin was born. And then, of course, we've ran it up. Our Black Swan event, very well known at this point, COVID. 3 years down the road, it was 2023, right? What did we have at the end of 2023? High interest rates, high inflation. Everybody expected a recession to continue in 2024, and it has been a nothing but face-melting rally to the upside for some assets, of course, right? This is where we've seen, of course, Bitcoin and some of the cryptos really take off here. We've seen the stock market, at least the majors, take. We've had nothing but all-time highs across indices, gold, Nvidia. All these crazy runs here is all part of this overall cyclical event, basically. So to me, I really have been targeting for a completion of this overall cycle, which in theory is going to lead to potentially the next Great Depression, in my opinion, right? This is actually a 100-year cyclical anniversary of the Great Depression. This is the end of this current 20-year cycle potentially. And I think that really is going to lean into 2027, 2028, but I will be scaling out and very cautious beginning basically now, 2026. This is a time frame when I would not personally be, deploying any new crazy long-term capital into markets. This is when I'm actually scaling out from everything I've been building into the markets over the last, 10 years just about. And obviously, I'm not looking to time the exact high by any means, but in this window of time, I do anticipate a pretty big correction to occur, basically across the board. Until then, we could very well be around this region here and still see more upside, though, right? That's the thing. And this is, of course, a multi-year setup. So with that all being said, that's the biggest reason why I've kind of leaned into the idea over the last few years that, on this last run here, this 2023 to 2027, maybe we wouldn't see the traditional 4-year cycle for Bitcoin where you get that, high, it comes in and, 4 years later after the previous, and then, a year-long, downtrend bear market. But now that we are here, you got to investigate and take a look at the context of the market around us, right? Because we don't want to just blindly be making multi-year, projections and predictions essentially, and then just only going by that because maybe 80% of it has come true so far. When we get to these key levels, we have to be able to adapt to the information at hand. And by no means do I know what the market is going to do, but I do think that there is a recipe for us to put in a significant high and a significant top, maybe not the top, but if it's anything near a traditional bear market time frame, it is now for that to soon ensue. And I think that something along these lines, where I think that the market is in a place, at least Bitcoin, where we could see a significant high come in again, and we will probably have a 5 to 10 month cool down, consolidation, correction, potentially a bear market, right? We don't know. And if anything, it's going to keep everybody arguing, right? So the question I had in the beginning was, is the 4-year cycle broken, or is it still basically in play where we, again, see that high come in 4 years later, which the last high was November of 2021, is this Q4 window of 2025 now, 4 years later, where we're going to see a significant high on Bitcoin, and then are we going to see this huge cool down? I think the answer is we're going to get both. And without just simply scrolling over and counting how many days and weeks it was between, peak to trough, we're going to take a look at the Fibonacci time that it took for us to basically expand from our high to low and then to see that next high, right? And in theory, it's going to be a measured move of that time frame, the 1 year this and the 4 year that, because that is exactly what we're measuring off of. But let's just see how the time frames do line up here. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a trend-based fib tool, all right, and I'm gonna go all the way back here to the last major rally before we got to 2021's high, all right, because this is a very interesting one that I just find it's a really great example. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll mark off our low here. So our market bottoms in January of 15, we get our spike up to the high, and then we're going to take that and we're just going to project it right off of the low, right? So essentially we're taking this overall low to high and we're projecting it off of our low, and that is going to give us a 1-to-1, which means that the exact amount of time it took from this low to this high, projecting it off our new low, should give us a window of time to be aware of for that next pivot in the market. And that 1-to-1, as you can see, comes in right at the very high of the market. And this is a weekly time frame. All right, so this week was around the 8th of November of 2021. And as you all know, the market topped in 2021 on November 9th. So this was 1 day off in the sense of looking at it on the weekly. If you go into the daily time frame, this actually had it topping around Halloween, October 31st. Okay, so from there we had a sizable downturn, right? Our bear market of 2022 that took us all the way down to the FTX collapse. Now, for the last few years, while I've held this notion that we may see the 4-year cycle be broken, and so far, honestly, another thing I wanted to add into it that truthfully, I don't know what the 4-year cycle, what the handbook says, right? Because I don't know necessarily that there is one out there. There's not necessarily enough data points, again, for us to really build a case for it. But I know that some will say things wrapped around the halving event, right? And for example, this time around, we broke the all-time high before the Bitcoin halving, I believe, which that's never necessarily happened before. Obviously, we have the ETFs now. We have rate cuts about to potentially come in, and the rate cuts is the number one thing, besides everybody getting into the idea that we could see this elongated cycle, that I could see us setting up for a pretty interesting reversal, essentially. And on top of rate cuts potentially coming in this month, at the end of this month specifically, and the end of this month has had my attention for a long time, and I'm going to show you why here in this video. Now, I've put this obviously in the Traders Club Discord for many moons. I just think it's time to kind of come out with a public version of this so that we can start speaking to it. I'm interested to see how it all plays out. Again, I don't know how the market's going to go down. I'm just very neutral, level-headed, cautious here. I don't care what the news is going to get into, whether it's crazily bullish or crazily bearish. I'm just paying attention to what the information at hand is and building an edge around that for myself and hopefully for the community around me. But not only are we coming into a time frame where Bitcoin's holding all-time highs, which is amazing. ETH is approaching an all-time high, which generally leads to a major altcoin season. Even myself, I've been anticipating more upside out of some of these alts. I think we will get it, even if it is a small burst before any type of downturn, if we are to see something along those lines. Very similar to like how we saw at the end of last year, December 2024, right, where XRP went 500% in 1 month. HBAR went 700% in 1 month. Those are just two examples. There was many other, basically the whole market 100% to 200% moved as far as the altcoins went. Obviously, we had the Solana Poo coins doing their thing. Everything I'm talking about right now, where I'm looking at a potential high coming in, it is weeks away, right? It's not something I'm looking at today where it's like, oh man, I'm getting very bearish and concerned here, because I'm not. I'm still relatively bullish here across the board. And I'm just pointing out, I like to point out the big moves before they happen, of course, because what is the point after? And I'm just preparing for a scenario here that I'm also putting in the data points, why I see this potentially unfolding, and how I'm going to approach it myself, right? So the contrarian side of me is always kind of scanning the markets, right? And again, we're approaching the time where the 4-year cycle is maybe going to be over, or whatever people would look to it like that. We're potentially going to get these rate cuts that if we do, and we get a little spike in the market, which I still anticipate move up, $130,000, $140,000 Bitcoin in the potentially coming weeks. If that's wrapped around the rate cuts, what happens? Everybody gets excited. Bull runs back on. We're so back, baby. All the altcoins, everything like that, right? We also have things like this that, not to get political at all, it's just and I don't even know if this is true, if he actually said this, right? But I'm just pointing it out that there's the major influences of the world. Just in, this person is saying that Bitcoin at $110,000 is the deal of the century. At $110,000. And this is my rebuttal to this. I said the shame is that this wasn't the narrative at $3,000 in 2018, at $3,000 in 2020, at $15,000 in 2022. I remember the exact narrative around all three of those. It's a scam. It's going to zero. It's a scam. It's going to zero. It's literally a scam. FTX just collapsed. Get your money out of everything. It's going to zero. But now at 110,000, it's the deal of a lifetime. So I personally look to these type of, and this is just one example. There's many out there, right? That when you start to see the glorified media coming around at these highs, it just traps people into one of two things. Either you're a new investor coming in and you're going to look to buy stuff because you don't want to miss the boat, especially if things are popping around you. Or if you're holding already, you continue to hold because you don't want to sell, because you don't want to be the fool, right? That's selling out when, this person is saying, or even just start talking about it, right? People think that like, hey, when the Trumps are talking about this, then everybody's paying attention, everybody's going to buy it. I don't want to sell it now. That's crazy. That is the example of being fearful when people are greedy in my eyes, right? So that's just kind of where I'm heading at here. Again, like I mentioned before, in the Traders Club Discord, this is where I put all of my updates, low time frame and high time frame, right? So a lot of people think sometimes it's only like short-term day trade setups, and while that is at times something that's really running rampant in the market, more than anything, I'm putting long-term buy and hold positions and my long-term outlooks and thesis and insights around everything. And even this 1 year ago on Bitcoin, we were trading at $58,000, right? I even put this in the reminder. Remember this gold pocket in time I covered last year? I just talked about this a few days ago in September 3rd. It was exactly 1 year ago today. We traded at $58,000. Everyone was pretty scared. If you remember correctly, that was around when we had the carry trade news going on, and we had a little bounce, but we dropped down to 48K, and everybody thought it was going to continue lower. We were targeting a move up. Here's the link to that message. Obviously, this was the photo. I'll show you the chart here in a second, but I was highlighting that every 4 years, oddly enough, somebody who's so against the 4-year cycle, but this was not necessarily a 4-year cycle piece. This was based on the fib times that I'm highlighting even now, right? So I'm not going off of the traditional 4-year, just everybody, the way they're looking at it in the sense of, every 4 years, it's just got to happen like this. I'm looking at this in the sense of technical analysis, right? So true blue. And each time we had this gold pocket in time coming from each cycle, it led to the final leg of that move essentially. And at the time 1 year ago, we were trading at $58,000. It was 2024. We were right in the gold pocket in September. Now fast forwarding another year up, this was that exact chart. Okay, so we were looking at the 2016 area right here. Gold pocket led to that next little leg up. Gold pocket in time again next to the last leg up. Gold pocket in time led to at least the next leg up, right? Is this the final leg? We'll kind of have to see here. But as I just pointed out with the previous cycle essentially having the high come in right on time, if we take the same projection from our 2018 low to our 2021 all-time high down to our FTX collapse 2022 low, it gives us a 1-to-1 projection of basically the overall cycle now, that there's a potential pivot coming here. And mind you, the gold pocket in time was the last pivot we had, which generally is a continuation, which we did see. We had a huge uptrend. The gold pocket occurred right here in September last year. We continued to the upside. A lot of times these 1-to-1s act as reversals. So that does come in at around the end of October. And we have another setup that gives us a potential completion zone just more locally, projecting it right around the end of September. Okay, so for me, while I do still anticipate more upside out of Bitcoin and the altcoins, this time frame right here I'm going to be paying big attention to. So it's essentially the end of this month in September going into the month of October. Because if we do see a sizable rejection basically come out of this time frame, this could set us up for a multi-month. In my eyes, it's at least going to be 5 to 10 months. If it's nothing more than this, right, where we saw last year, where we had this huge consolidation, pretty decent little pullback, nothing crazy, it was like 30%. What did we see the most? Everybody was arguing, right? Oh, the bear market is here, market is topped, bear market is here, market is topped. That is way more than likely what we'll see here too, right? If we get a little elongated pullback that just freaks everybody out, mind you, the altcoins will get wrecked in this time period. not maybe from day one, but overall, if we see a pretty decent pullback, this is just a time to be cautious, okay? Again, I'm not married to this to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, go out and sell everything and be panicking. By no means am I pointing that out. I'm just pointing out the biggest pivots in time, which I've done so far every step of the way, especially in the Traders Club. The two notable ones were literally the all-time high right here and then the all-time high again right here. With this, we've been targeting 130 since last year, even 122 to 130. So with that being said, just be aware that, we're in the realm, folks. I just want to point out we're in a really big realm where a reversal could occur. And even if it's just something along this line, it's not a great time, right? So just be aware. I think that in this September and October timeframe, we have the setup for extreme euphoria and bullishness to kind of enter around here. Where you see if rate cuts get cut, of course, October and Q4 comes around, everybody gets very excited, thinking that those are just, they have to be up, only time frames. Today's, market where we have the altcoins still really haven't pushed for the most part, at least to where everybody likes it to be. And then you have Ethereum not really breaking out of the all-time high quite yet. We're in a position where I think people would be kind of waiting and expecting that to be the next piece. And while I do expect the altcoins to continue moving over time here in the next 5-10 months, I do foresee a cool down coming along the way too, right? So that is in line with the 5 to 10 month cool down for Bitcoin. Again, 10 months is a long time. And that's basically a year-long bear market, right? That people would, likely say if we experienced that's what it was. I don't know what the case is going to be. I'm just pointing out with at least a few weeks to maybe a month or two in advance that we have a big time frame that you need to be aware of, that at least myself, I'm going to be very cautious around. I do have take profits and things that I'm planning on scaling out of along the way here. I've been pretty vocal about that. ETH will be a piece that I do take a heavy profit on, that I've been building and creating over the long term. Solana, XRP, a lot of my other altcoins, if I hit some of these targets that I've been waiting on for the last several months, I'll be scaling completely out of them, and then generally just be in pretty much Ethereum and probably Bitcoin for the most part. So that is my personal strategy. I've been in this market for a long time. I'm not looking to come in and have to get a 10x or 100x. Those days have come and gone for me, at least so far. I'm looking to preserve capital as much as possible. So by no means am I trying to call for the end of the market or a bear market or anything like that. I'm just showing you where the next pivot is coming in time and in price. And if we see the overly bullish news and everything like that stacked on top of it, obviously that is usually not a great sign either. And we know how that all plays out, right? Last two significant highs just in this bull market, right? The 74K high right here. I mean, we broke the $69,000 high. We had the halving coming up. ETFs were going wild, and what'd you still get? It didn't save us from a pullback. You pushed up right here, inauguration day. Crypto Pro administration did not save us from this pullback, and this is only a 30% pullback on Bitcoin. This was 60% on ETH, 90% on alts, 90% on alts. We may get to that point, right? I don't know that for a fact. I just am pointing out, and even if this still just becomes another area where you get that pullback, it is no bear market, because honestly, I foresee it more so being something along this line where we get a 30-40% drop and we continue up to like 200K, if I'm being honest, and just fulfill this remainder of the housing market cycle where we do top out with a lot of things, 2027, which, mind you, is only like a year away, year and a half. So to wrap this whole video up, at the end of the day, none of us know with absolute certainty how the Bitcoin 4-year cycle will play out this time. But what matters is that we stay open-minded, we adapt when the data changes, and we manage risk no matter what the market throws our way. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I truly appreciate each of you tuning in as always. My name is Paul Sampson. This is DataDash. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, everybody, cheers.